उनको अंग्रेजी नहीं आती है, एंड्रॉइड या उनको अंग्रेजी जितनी आती है उतने में उनको बोलने में दिक्कत होती है, कि बोलने से उन्हें लगता है कि शायद लोग हंसेंगे उसके ऊपर. And many of them, when they come outside the class and individually they meet me and raise questions, they raise brilliant questions. But despite all my efforts, inside the class they do not raise questions. I think this is one of the challenges that we are facing, as Papia was also saying, that we need to make, as a teacher, students comfortable inside the classroom and make the point that knowledge is not only about language. Of course, I think language is also epistemic term, and you are bringing different kinds of knowledge through that. But in the exchange that you make in the class, I think the language should not be a barrier for us. That is the art of listening we have to develop. I remember one of my students long back when I started teaching for the first time. I joined LSR as a ad hoc teacher. And in my class, there was one student who was very bright, but she would rarely come to the class. And I gave her full attendance. And the principal was also taking that class, and she called me and asked me that if she attended my classes, because I had given full attendance. And she was not attending her class definitely. This was famous principal, what's her name? Meenakshi. So I said, no, she did not attend my classes either. She said, well, if she did not attend your classes, why did you give full attendance? I said, she doesn't need to attend classes for two reasons. One, that she is very bright. She reads all the readings. Whenever it comes to the class, she answers all the questions fairly well. Second, that her first priority is Odissi dance. And I came to know recently, now she has come back to me, and she has done a lot of experiments in Odissi dance. And she is very famous, I guess some people might be knowing her. Her name is Leela Hota. And she is now experimenting with Indian intellectual tradition and mixing that with the dance and all those things. So I think the silences that happens in the class, we have to understand. It's not only the question of language, but also otherwise. Every student is a different person. So inside the class, if we treat them as a person, then probably the language issue becomes secondary. That is the first thing. Second example I'll take, another student of mine during my earlier days when I started teaching, who was a Hindi medium student. Now he has a book also in Hindi. He wrote 3-4 books in English first, and now his recent book is in Hindi. And he mentions this point there, that in Delhi University he was known as that Hindi medium boy. That Hindi medium boy was very humiliating for him, I guess, and a lot of professors, and some professors called him that way. His name is Hilal Ahmed, who wrote his thesis in SOAS. And he said that when he reached there, and this was a Ford Foundation Fellowship that he got, and this was designed for people from margins. And when he reached there, the first thing the professor told him was that English is not your first language, so do not bother about it. You have to learn it, use it, but don't get depressed about it that you don't know the language. He says that was the turning point for his life. Otherwise, he was carrying that kind of inferiority complex all the time there. So probably we have to transcend, that's the point I want to make, that we have to transcend the barrier of language in order to communicate with them. I do not know what is a larger framework in which we have to think about it, because I have another friend who, the moment I talk like this, he says that, well, then I will speak in Tamil or Telugu. I think that I tell him that if you start speaking in Telugu, then I will try to understand that also. We can understand many Indian languages. So probably if we try a little hard, we can understand different languages and different arguments if they can design it well. I have a problem now. I have a PhD student who refuses to write in English. And he says that my mind gets blocked when I start writing in English, and I can't think in English, and I lose my creativity when I start writing in English. What should we do with that?
What language you want to learn?
Hindi.
What is the problem? English speakers can.
No, because you are located in that area. You are located in the area. Maybe you are located, and yeah, you are located in this area. And maybe in Kerala you will find somebody who will say Malayalam. And Hindi language is another problem. You know, this is the colonial hangover is much more with the Hindi language than any other language. I mean, Kaviraj writes in Bangla. He has a book on Marxism in Bangla recently published. Nobody says anything to him, but the moment I wrote my book, a friend of mine told me, "तुम हिंदी वाले हो जाओगे, बच के रहना तुम हिंदी वाले हो जाओगे." So this is something that I think this humiliation is much more for the Hindi language than any other language, I guess. Despite the fact that Hindi could be equally oppressive as it becomes part of the ruling class as it does, no doubt about it. But I think we need to think beyond that. We need to think in terms of what Tanmay said, moving the center and relocating the center every time, so that is very creative process that multilingual interactions can create. I think one of the most important thing that, or most beautiful thing that I realized after coming to JNU was that I was getting students from different languages. So I tried to learn a lot of things from them, and they were bringing new experiences, something that he was mentioning. And I was actually feeling very excited about this articulation, that this new thing will allow you to comprehend multiple epistemologies. I have a tribal student working on Urao community, and he quotes Urao poetry in his thesis. And those Urao poetries, he does translate that into English also for us, maybe not fine translation, but we can talk, we can make sense of that. And whatever sense we make out of that, that becomes wonderful epistemic resource for anybody. So I think this creating multilingual atmosphere, not humiliating any language, not having a language racism, rather having language democracy, is very crucial for a country like India. And that is not our weakness, that is our strength. Kaviraj says very nicely that India probably is the only country where knowing your own language is a crime. Nowhere else it is a crime. So I think we need to really get out of that. And therefore I like this initiative. Of course, the way we articulated our proposal for IITs was something similar to Ashoka University, that you get them 3 months earlier, give them admission 3 months earlier, and train them in the language so that they can produce your work in this, but do not force them or do not reject them on the ground of this, that they don't know your language. I think many such universities like Ashoka, I do not know, but I have a feeling that language itself becomes the criteria for selection. For social science it is disastrous, because you will never be able to get different experiences from different categories of people, different layers of society. So this kind of initiative for having multilingual classes, multilingual atmosphere where all languages feel better. In fact, why can't we learn one more language? That should not be very difficult. In 4 years of stay in JNU doing PhD, one may learn one of the languages which is not the mother tongue. So this kind of language training should be possible and is also desirable. I think, why do we need to decolonize? And I want to link it with this. You know, I was attending a conference in IIC on philosophy, and the title was very interesting: Rendering Indian Philosophy in English Language. I think this is a big problem. Yeah, 1 minute. This is a big problem that, jokingly I say, that I don't mind it if I give a critique of JNU, that the knowledge hierarchy is such that JNU knows what is happening in the West, Allahabad knows that JNU knows what is happening in the West, Patna knows that Allahabad knows that JNU knows what is happening in the West. That is the hierarchy of the knowledge. This is where we are stuck. I think most creative social science are now coming out from people who have good command on more than one language, English plus any other language. Even in English, the kind of social science I can see, they are bringing the real world experiences and theorizing that. That's happening much more there than compared to monolingual academic atmosphere. That's the point. Thank you.